What's going on, everyone? Today, 60% of the S&P 500 fell down in the red, and as you all know, today is the big day of the week as Nvidia reported earnings, and it's safe to say that today was a great day to be a market maker who sold some options on this one. But we have a lot to talk about today as Nvidia actually reported some pretty good earnings, but at the same time, we are seeing a decent amount of selling pressure in the market overall. We have Bitcoin bleeding. We have more important Trump tariff news. And on top of that, we have one of the highest flying, best performing stocks in the market just getting obliterated off of some pretty suspicious news. On top of that, we have a lot of great setups and a pretty interesting big money play today. So make sure to stick with us all the way until the end. But besides that, Tom, let's get right to it.
Yeah, the SPY actually tried to gap up a little bit this morning, and whenever the market opened, it bounced up a little bit and retested $599 to $600, but it was not able to get through there and rejected off once again. And I would say, Mike, towards the end of the day, we started to see sellers or traders get a lot of selling pressure going, as I think there was some de-risking ahead of this Nvidia earnings event, which is having a pretty big implication on the overall market. And everybody is sitting here like, hey, what is going on with Nvidia? How are the numbers looking? Honestly, Mike, the numbers are coming in a pretty great way. Revenue is up 78% year over year, which is fantastic. We're seeing revenue beating as well. EPS came in at 0.89 versus 0.84 estimates. And then even their outlook for 2026 was fantastic here. They're looking for an outlook in 2026 with sales expectations of 43 billion plus or minus 2% versus a 41.75 billion estimate. So they beat that estimate there. Mike, it seems like every number is pretty good, but the stock is red.
That's the thing, and that's exactly what we've been talking about over the past few days. It is great to see Nvidia hit it out of the park with their business. Like you mentioned, they beat on profit and revenue expectations, and they're basically telling everyone that, like, yeah, we're expecting ourselves to continue to crush it going forward, and that's awesome. But the stock has been, soaring into the heavens for years at this point, and it gets harder and harder to sustain that level of just complete bullishness and euphoria without posting, numbers that just truly, make people's jaw drop. And while these numbers are great, they just weren't good enough for, the current investor. So as we look at Nvidia right now, it is a chop fest in after hours. What do we look at in terms of the charts here, Tom?
Yeah, I really like this 125 recent low on Nvidia from this week, and I know in after hours it hasn't really broke below there yet, but that low is definitely going to be a level that I am keeping my eyes on. I guess the true low is like 124.50, but objectively I'm looking at like a 50-cent range around there, and if we do continue to see selling pressure come in, I'm definitely going to have my eyes on 115 and 116 underneath here. As we can see, there were a lot of bounces at this range in the past as well. With Nvidia, though, Mike, I really think that it needs to break this trend here of lower highs. We can see that it's been posting a pretty bad downtrend in the short term, and it just keeps bouncing off of said trends. I was kind of hoping that the earnings would be good enough to propel us through here and maybe get another bull run started, but so far we're not seeing that. But maybe Jensen Huang can convince some people on the earnings conference call.
That's the thing. So basically right now, the stock is pinned. Like Tom mentioned, if we see some real momentum come in with the conference call, that can change things. But looking at this stock tomorrow, basically we need something to actually drive it. If no major news comes out, this thing is just going to be a chop fest, and honestly it's going to be very hard to justify trading, and it might just be worth looking at other names. At the same time, if we do see some big news release on this conference call that moves the stock significantly in either direction, that is where the opportunity will come into play. But basically everyone is looking at this stock and they're just pinned. It's that simple. So either way, keep it close on watch.
Yeah, and one thing about it, Mike, I know earlier you were talking about some of the numbers and how they just didn't really like wow investors. Now, these are some good earnings numbers. Don't get me wrong, guys, but whenever you hear revenue up 78% year over year, I know we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but revenue was climbing up 265% in Q4 of last year. I know that that's not going to be sustainable, but 78% is not even close to 265% as far as a number, especially for as large of a business as Nvidia was, still posting that kind of growth was pretty insane. But I just figured I'd mention that again because it's striking just to see him, slowing down a little bit.
No doubt. In other news, Tom, Bitcoin is getting obliterated. It actually fell down to lows of $82,000 today after just hitting an all-time high of $109,000 back on January 20th. What is going on here?
Pretty rough news today, sending Bitcoin lower. We're actually seeing, I think, Bitcoin starting to become pretty correlated to the overall market, Mike. We can see in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, there's a strong correlation between SPY and Bitcoin, and that has not always been the case, of course, but I will say Bitcoin, Mike, has been kind of falling off in the short term with, I think, a lot of the worries as of why the overall market's falling. Of course, we're seeing Trump with tariffs, but we're seeing just a lot of outflows in general, and we can even see that, there were record outflows on the new Bitcoin ETFs that came in as well.
Yeah, so just in general, we've been seeing more and more profit taking, not only with Bitcoin, but just the market in general for multiple reasons. Like you mentioned, there is some serious risk, just in the world right now with all of these tariffs escalations. But at the same time, whether you're looking at Bitcoin, big tech stocks, or the market in general, these assets are at sky high prices, and it just, it makes sense to see some selling pressure come into play here, especially after the mega run that we've seen ever since the election results. So that is worth keeping in mind. But one thing that definitely added to the sell-off today was the extra tariff news that we just got.
Yeah, 100%, Mike. And Trump did his first cabinet meeting today, and Elon Musk even attended this. But at the cabinet meeting, he made a flurry of new tariff announcements. And Mike, it looks like April 2nd is the main day to keep in mind here. So he said pretty much April 2nd for everything. So be ready for that with Mexico and Canada. Now, they were talking about, and Trump even said just 2 days ago, that they were going forward with the scheduled March 4th deadline for Mexico and Canada's tariffs. Now, just 2 days later, he comes out and goes, April 2nd for everything. I don't know, Mike. Things aren't totally clear here in the world of tariffs in the short term, but I will say the Mexico and Canada tariffs are going to be very important. Of course, we have reciprocal tariffs on every country as well, and something that kind of shocked the market today, and even if we go to the SPY and we look at it on a 5-minute intraday chart, right whenever the SPY started selling, Trump started talking about imposing 25% tariffs on the EU as well, and was even quoted saying the European Union was formed to screw the United States. Let's be honest.
Yeah, so it's definitely been an interesting political situation, and I have a pretty strong feeling this sort of intense political situation isn't going to calm down anytime soon, especially related to tariffs, because we're basically set to tariff every country, basically, or at least all of the ones that tariff us. So it's definitely going to spice things up quite a bit, and it's not a good thing for markets, and we can already see that. For those of you who were not trading back in 2018, there was a pretty intense stock market reaction to the trade war we had with China, where it was one of the most violent drops that we've seen in recent years, of course, besides the COVID crash. Of course, that situation is much different than the situation we're in now, but I figured, it's worth bringing up historical, recent relevant situations we're kind of heading into.
Yeah, definitely. And that resulted in a 20% pullback. And like we've talked about, Mike, a 20% pullback would kind of end the bull market. And the current bull market has been very strong. It's been ongoing for a long time. And the SPY's still going to have to pull back quite a bit to finally get to that 20% mark. But keep your eyes on the tariff situation. I'm sure we'll see even more updates. And who knows, Mike, by April 2nd, we'll be talking about tariffs coming out in May at that point.
Exactly. So either way, let's monitor the situation very closely. But in other news, Tom, we had quite the move today out of ticker symbol APP. For those of you who don't know this stock, it has been one of the strongest and craziest stocks in the market over the past few years. From the start of 2023 to its recent highs in 2025, this stock has increased by 4,700%. And today's news is certainly giving a lot of those gains back. So, Tom, looking at this chart here, we can see we saw a mega drop over the past couple of days. What is going on here?
Yeah, every once in a while, we have a stock hit by some short reports, and it looks like there's two short seller reports here with Fuzzy Panda and Culper Research coming out here with APP, and there's some pretty bad quotes down here. So Fuzzy Panda came out, and they said that we believe AppLovin has pulled every trick in the book. They also said, we've been told they're stealing data from Meta in their e-commerce push. We also discovered AppLovin exploiting consumers and their data in ways which are clear violations of Google and Apple's App Store policies. And there were more things that went on, obviously, but I think that this was really the brunt of it right here, Mike. And they were also talking about maybe downloading weird apps and stuff like that through their network. So it was kind of strange. A lot of stuff with advertising tactics as well. Nonetheless, AppLovin has two short reports against it, and it's starting to tank down in a pretty massive way. It closed down 12%, but looking at them, Mike, from their peak to the low today, they've actually pulled back around 45%, and there's a big gap to fill down here. If they fill that gap, it's going to get pretty brutal.
Yeah, this stock is going to be extremely volatile in the short term. The more pressure it puts on its recent lows, the more panic it is going to continue to bring in. At the same time, when you fall from, $525 all the way down to like $300 in let's say just a very short period of time, it definitely reaches that mark of overextension. So looking at APP for tomorrow, Tom, what would you say are the key pivotal levels to watch for this one in both directions?
APP today, as it dropped, I was surprised that it broke under $300 as easily as it did, but it actually ended up bouncing and holding at the next support just under there, very close to 280. So I definitely liked that. And as support, those are some really big levels to keep in mind, especially $300, which is a major psychological level. Now, let's just say APP does recover up a little bit tomorrow. I definitely like 368 as a solid resistance, and even before we get there, $350 even will be another crucial psychological level, and it lines up pretty perfectly on the charts as solid resistance and previous support as well. So that's really what I'm looking at here with APP, but like you said, it's going to be very volatile, and I would say the best opportunities with this would be the quicker scalp opportunities, kind of like today, bouncing off that 305 support.
Sounds good. And yeah, it's going to trend pretty strongly in both directions, so definitely keep it on the radar for some scalp opportunities. But even shifting over to the SPY right now, it's definitely been a little bit shaky in the short term. So what are you seeing for the key levels there?
Yeah, it's kind of sad to see the SPY falling off as much as it has been in the short term, but sometimes the market just shifts a little bit and we have to adjust, and I really do still like this 590 support from this week. I am definitely keeping that on the radar. That is a multi-month support as well. If we go out to the hourly chart, we can see that there's been multiple bounces right off of $590 as marked by the two arrows on the left side of the screen there. But as far as the price action today, we really based around 592, which is a pretty good, I would say, smaller support, but definitely still a good intraday level to watch for tomorrow. If we break under 592, I'll be watching for a push towards that 590 area, and then further breakdown from there. As far as resistance, though, Mike, we've been talking about it for weeks now. $600 and $599 have to be on the radar. It worked out as perfect resistance again today. And I know a lot of traders were actually shorting the SPY today as it got to like 599.50 up towards 600 and ended up playing out really, really well there.
Yeah, and again, shout out to you, Tom, with all these great levels. They've been coming in key, especially in the short term, and SPY is at a pivotal point right now. It has some heavy resistance overhead. It's getting closer and closer to some of these recent lows. Nvidia is holding up fine so far, but, if we do see a strong move out of this one, it could definitely shift things quite a bit. So we're definitely set for a pretty exciting rest of the week. And as we look at the earnings calendar, we could see that most of this week's major earnings are, already taken care of, but we do have like a handful of exciting reports as the week goes on.
TD Ameritrade tomorrow. Shout out Thinkorswim. No, I'm just kidding. But with my favorite stock for tomorrow, Mike, I'm honestly really looking at Rocket Lab in the short term. Like RKLB has had a lot of crazy price action, as well as Archer, and even SMR is kind of mixed in tomorrow, which kind of went under the radar a little bit. Over there in the nuclear sector with the small modular reactors. So quite a bit still on the lineup, and even NCLH and VST in the morning tomorrow will probably be pretty highly watched. These stocks are definitely no Nvidias, but they have pretty big moves.
All right, there we go. And then shifting over to the economic schedule, we do have durable goods data and GDP data set to release 1 hour before the market opens. This isn't like the craziest data ever, but if it does come in outside expectations, it can definitely shift the markets. So pay attention to the news 1 hour before the market opens. And then, of course, on Friday is when we have the more important economic data with the PCE and then personal income and personal spending, but we'll cover that more in tomorrow's video, and we'll get right to some setups and predictions for today. A stock that is close on my radar is Palantir. We all know this one has been extremely crazy in the short term, and it held up very well off of some recent support at the $85.25 level, and even like up to that $88 support as well. This one's definitely on my radar for scalp opportunities tomorrow. It is forming a base right now, and assuming it can, continue to hold this in a strong way, there will be some bullish opportunities. Again, assuming the stock can put a reasonable amount of pressure on its intraday highs and again hold this support in a strong way. But this stock has been one of like the most in-play tickers over the past few weeks, and I would even say over the past couple of years.
Yeah, definitely. They've propelled themselves up into the stratosphere and up to the top of everybody's watch list, I'll say. But I'm definitely a fan of Palantir here, off support as well. We've been talking about the support for a few days now, and it's definitely going to be something that we keep on watching for sure. With my first setup, I'm looking at NIO to the upside. The China stocks went berserk today, and from open, NIO had an amazing run, pretty much popping 10%. Didn't gap up too much. A lot of this run actually came after the market opened, but whenever I go to NIO's daily chart, I really love the base that's starting to form here as well. We're starting to hold this $4 and even like $4.30 support in a really good way. We're holding the range really well, and I could see a retest of like the top end of this range over the next few days around $4.90 to $5. That would be a great test for tomorrow, so that's really what I'm looking for with NIO, Mike, and the China stocks have really been holding up extremely well in the short term.
Definitely, and it is nice to see some real momentum finally start to creep into NIO. As our traders from, a few years ago remember, NIO has been a very strong moving company. It's just over the past few years, it's been in the wrong way, and they certainly have a lot of work to do to get back anywhere close to the levels they were previously at, like their highs of like $68 a share back from 2021. But either way, there is some nice momentum developing, and it is also on my radar. But another stock that's definitely worth watching is Tesla. This one has been pretty brutal in the short term, and the price action today was, again, pretty weak. Looking at Tesla, while it did close weak today, it wasn't as bad as yesterday, which of course is not necessarily saying a lot, but it is holding off that $288 level. Assuming it can hold this level tomorrow, maybe there could be some, bullishness that comes in here. But if we see a break below this, then it's just going to be like another blow to Tesla stock. The key opportunity with this one is that it has been trending in a strongly momentum-driven way. This stock is clearly in play, and when Tesla moves, it tends to move, quite a bit. So this one is mainly for like an adaptable, like trend-following play intraday tomorrow. Again, if we see a break below like that 288 level, that'll be a pretty rough sign. But at the same time, if we can like hold off this level and like maybe form some support, then there can be some like decent like reward risk opportunities playing the move back up.
Yeah, it's right around $300 as well. I will definitely have it on the radar. It's one of my favorites to watch lately, especially to the downside, but I'm with you. It's getting a little overextended, and I'm also potentially watching for some short-term support to start to hold up a bit. With my next setup, I'm looking at Microsoft again. I talked about this one yesterday and started to sell off a little bit more today, and it's even starting to hold its support a little more strongly in the short term. There's actually a couple levels that I'm really watching for today. I really like $398, and then even over the past couple days, $397. And we can go to the Bookmap here and see that there's a pretty clear shot. There's not too many buyers stacked up down to $390. So if we do see some of this short-term support start to give out, I will be looking for that good move down to around $390. You can see that there's a little bit of buyers at like $394 and $395, but we're talking like stacks of like 4,000 shares and 14,000 shares versus stacks of like 40,000 shares. So I'm definitely watching 390 a little bit more as a good level coming up. And I do like $400 here. I think Microsoft will start to have some pretty good fluctuations off of this range.
All right, sounds good there. And I will also keep this one on watch as well. But besides that, Tom, it is now about that time for today's momentum plays. And with the first one, we have a hood to the upside.
Yeah, Robinhood had a pretty good day today. If they can break out above $50.50, keep watching them up.
All right, with the next one, we have Google to the downside.
Poor Google. A lot of tech stocks still pretty rough in the short term. If they break under 171.50, keep watching them down.
All right, and then with the last one, we have Meta to the upside.
META, pretty good short-term price action. Again, it seems like Meta just doesn't stop here, but if they break out above 683, keep watching them up as well.
All right, so we have Meta on watch for a potential move higher, and then we have Hood on watch for a potential move higher as well. And then don't forget about Google with its downside level there. Either way, these three stocks are only plays if they break through the levels listed. The stronger and more consistent these trends move, the better they become. If they just chop around and don't even break the levels listed, do not force the setups. And as always, have stop losses. You have to, define your risk for every trade you ever take, because, not doing that is certainly not trading properly. You can learn a lot more about, smart, long-term, disciplined trading habits for free in the key lessons channel of the StockedUp Discord. So you can definitely check that out in the description down below. But besides that, Tom, it's now about that time for today's $809,000 big money trade. And we are looking at ticker symbol IGT. Today, the big money bought the 20 strike call options that expire on July 18th of 2025. Again, this is an $809,000 trade. IGT has been trending pretty strongly over the past few weeks, but is definitely closer towards the lower end of its historical range, which is good to see. Looking at IGT, they're a multinational gambling company, and as we look at these options, they are a little bit far out of the money at the 20 strikes, which I don't love, but considering how much time they have, it's certainly justifiable. Looking at this trade, the more pressure you can put on its recent highs, like all other setups, the better it's going to become. I do like how it's, closer to the bottom end of its range, and it's definitely one worth keeping on the radar.
Yeah, IGT is a pretty interesting stock, especially being in the gambling and casino industry. That's definitely an interesting industry here. I know that these stocks can go pretty crazy sometimes, and IGT is definitely basing off of pretty good support around this $16.80 to $17 range. I really like how it recently had this wick that touched right around $17, then started ripping right back up off of that level. That's a great sign in my opinion. I actually like this play quite a bit, Mike. There's a lot of time to it. There's a good support holding up. The risk reward's not terrible here. And I think that $20 is fairly far away, but if we continue with this uptrend, I mean, it could get there in 2 to 3 days with the way it's moving right now.
Yeah, and they just reported earnings as well, and initially they dropped off of it, but they recovered right back up, which is definitely a really good sign to see. So definitely keep this one on the radar. But before we continue on, if you haven't already smashed that subscribe button, definitely consider doing that. Every single day we cover the most important news, information, earnings, chart setups, big money plays, and everything else you have to know about the market in around 20 to 25 minutes or less. It takes us hours to make these videos, and again, we post all the time. So definitely consider joining the Stocked Up crew and smashing that subscribe button. But we also want to give a giant shout out to today's member of the day, Smoke Show Bullies, who had a great post in the Discord today with over $4,000 worth of gains and some great words as well. So huge shout out to you, Smoke Show Bullies, and keep on rolling. It's an exciting time to be a trader. As we've been saying, Nvidia's earnings have been a little bit choppy so far, but it is just the beginning, and we have a lot going on in the market right now.
Nvidia better start getting some action going, Mike, because I want to see some better movement here. So far, it's doing pretty well now, extending up in a pretty decent way, like from close, or at least close to close. It's up around 2% at the high of after hours, like 2.8. It'd be cool to see Nvidia maybe close up above like 140 at the end of after hours tonight, or maybe like at open tomorrow. That'd be pretty awesome to see them get up to there, but definitely needs to get a little bit more action going, in my opinion. But let's just keep watching the overall market, keep adapting. We might see a bit of consolidation in the short term, but don't be scared of that either. There's been a lot of selling pressure lately. If Nvidia goes green, we might see a slight pop back up. So be ready to adapt. Keep watching $600 overhead. If we re-break that, that's where I'll become a little bit more bullish.
Sounds good. And then last but not least, if you guys have not already traded with Bookmap, you're definitely missing out. As we say, it's like X-ray vision for the stock market, and it quite literally shows you the exact levels that buyers and sellers are stacked up at. And, you know, it's definitely a great time to use Bookmap if you haven't already, especially with the recent market conditions. So if you're interested, you can save using the Stocked Up link. Stocked Up viewers do save with the link in the description and the comments down below. But besides that, thank you all so much for watching, and let's crush it in the market tomorrow.